Welcome to the System Simplified podcast, where we feature top leaders who share stories on how to successfully systemize a business. Now, let's get started with the show.
Hello, Adi. Klevit here, the host of the System Simplified podcast, where I feature top founders, entrepreneurs, and thought leaders about systematizing a business. And today's episode is being brought to you by Business Success Consulting Group, where we create, document, optimize, and implement processes and procedures so businesses can grow and thrive. And today's guest is Noah Rosenfarb. Hi, Noah.
Hello, thank you for having me.
You are very welcome. Well, I heard Noah speak in person in several events. We are both part of entrepreneur organizations, EO, and the topics that he speaks about are fascinating, and that's why I reached out and asked him to be a guest on this podcast so our listeners can hear it as well. And I will get the opportunity to ask him different questions that I want answers to, and we can hear it on the podcast. So it's going to be a lot of fun.
Looking forward to it.
Great. So now, first of all, let me introduce you with the proper bio so our listeners will know who you are. So you are a third-generation CPA, and you built Freedom Family Office to help entrepreneurs produce predictable income, create their ideal life, and build their legacy. I mean, that's what people want, and you call it freedom, which is amazing. So again, you're helping entrepreneurs produce predictable income. Who doesn't want that? Create their ideal life and build their legacy. Three amazing things that every entrepreneur wants. So you've written 4 books, and you took a company you founded public, and you completed about 50 real estate investments valued in excess of 900 million. So I would say that you don't only talk the talk, you walk the walk, you know what you're talking about. And what I would like to do in this interview is to share the tools, resource, and strategy you have used to become rich beyond money. You know, that's definitely a very interesting subject, and how you encourage others to use it, and how do you practice that with other people, and how do you help them? So that's what we're going to be talking about.
Great. My favorite topic.
Absolutely. All right. Rich beyond money. What does that mean?
I think it means something different to everyone, but the way I've defined it is that you have financial freedom. So you have enough income every month to cover all the bills that you want. That's the rich part. And then the beyond money part, to me, means that when you look at your life, when you look at your calendar, when you think about the things that you're doing, you're really happy with how you're spending your time. And beyond that, you also have meaning and purpose in your life. So I think, unfortunately, for a lot of entrepreneurs, they have this vision that they're one day going to sell their business, and that's going to give them the financial freedom that they wanted, and it's going to clear their calendar so they could do all the things they ever wanted to do. And what they miss is that often they lose that meaning and purpose that really came from being in their business and solving problems, or as Chip Conley from Modern Elder Academy says, they lose out on the agitation of business ownership.
Right, that's correct. So how do you help people figure out what does it mean for them to be rich beyond money?
We do a lot of questions around how people want to spend their time. One of the simple exercises that your audience can do is just go buy a lottery ticket and think about winning, and sit down and answer these really 4 simple questions. What are the things that you'd start doing? What are the things that you'd stop doing? Who are the people you'd spend more time with? And who are the people you'd spend less time with? And then once you have those answers, try and consider whether or not you actually need to win the lottery to move closer to those goals. And most often in my life, I found that that's going to drive me to be rich beyond money, because I may not necessarily even need the money to start living more closely aligned with the true purpose that I have inside of me.
I love it. I think it's great. Now, we talked about you help, and one of the things you help entrepreneur is produce predictable income, have predictable income. Tell us more about that. How do you go about it, and what does that mean?
Well, I think there's one way is to measure it, and predictable income I like to think of as also kind of island income. So if you were stranded on an island and you didn't have access to the internet or your cell phone, how much income would you generate every month? And how persistent would it be? For many of us that own businesses, maybe the first month, the business might perform well. But if we were on that island for a year or two, we might have a feeling in our gut that things are not going to go well without us. So that income isn't as predictable as we'd want it to be, versus perhaps maybe you have a bond portfolio that's generating 4% on your investments. Well, you could be stuck on that island for years and years, and that portfolio is likely to continue to generate that income. So one of the things we encourage you to figure out is, well, how much income do you actually want? And where are you getting it from? And how much of it do you have right now? Most people don't even know how much passive income they're generating. And what I always recommend to entrepreneurs that are thinking of selling their business is to try and get 20% of that targeted goal amount before you even list your business for sale. And there's a variety of reasons why I would encourage you to do that, but getting to that 20% target is a great mile marker.
So basically getting 20% from passive income that doesn't depend on your business?
Correct. Yeah, because if you can get, let's just say a lot of the clients that I deal with, they probably want something like $30,000 to $50,000 a month of predictable income coming in each and every month, net of taxes. Well, in order to generate $6,000 to $10,000 a month, you're going to have to make some various investments in different types of investments. Maybe it's real estate. That's an asset class that I happen to really like. Maybe it's stocks and bonds. Maybe it's making loans to people and generating interest on private debt. Maybe you like investing in startup businesses. But in order to figure out how you're going to generate that passive income, you're going to have to learn and become a beginner again. And the best time to do that is while you still have your cash flow coming in from your company.
Makes sense. So then you figure out how to do that, you find a successful line, and then when you sell your business, then you can continue because you already started to do that, and you can build upon that.
Yeah, I was just actually reflecting this morning on how much money I've lost over the years. And, I don't expect to never lose money again either, but, the things I've lost money in, I tend not to continue to invest in as often as the things where I'm consistently making money. But the only way I've learned is through those experiences. And it's a lot easier to withstand the loss when you're still making income.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Good. So now create the ideal life for entrepreneurs. What is your strategy about that?
So we talked a little about that lottery exercise. I think that's one good way to try and give you a tactical strategy for how do I start doing things today? How do I want to spend more time with my parents who are getting older, or I want to spend more time with my spouse. Okay, how can I integrate that into my life? But we also use an exercise called True North, where we help you envision whatever your next stage of life is going to look like. Maybe that's 5 or 10 years away when you become an empty nester. Maybe there's another mile marker in your life that you're thinking, oh, that's when my schedule is going to evolve. My freedom and flexibility is going to change. My desire to work is going to be different. And looking out into that future, thinking through what is that lifestyle? What are the goals that you have when that time comes around? And how do we start planning and arranging your affairs so you can do more of it now? So myself as an example, when my kids were young, I believe they were like 6 and 2, we were going to spend 2 weeks up in New Jersey. I was living in Florida at the time. I came from New Jersey. We're going back to New Jersey for 2 weeks, go to Sesame Place and travel around and see family and friends. And I thought, it would be great if I really was able to take the whole summer off. And so when I had that idea, I said, well, what do I need to do to put myself in a position where I can only work on school days? And within 3 years, I was able to restructure my business through processes and systems so that my time and effort was contributed to the company on my schedule. And so I could be like my wife, who was a school teacher before we had kids. She only worked on school days. And so same with me, I would only work on school days.
Amazing. So you mentioned processes and systems. Thank you. What processes and systems did you put in place in order for you to be able to live, or to, maybe it's not your completely ideal life, but getting close to it?
There's a variety of things I've done over the years. I think a lot of the systems and processes have to do with getting comfortable as an entrepreneur with delegation, and also with how to manage quality control. Because so often, like Michael Gerber wrote about in the E-Myth, he says, most of us grow up as entrepreneurs because we're good at the work that we're selling to our customer. And as a result, because we're so good at it, we get more customers. But if we don't want to do more work because we have more customers, we then need to instill the people, the processes, the systems, and the trust and reliability that we know that the quality that the team can produce is acceptable to the marketplace, even if there may be a small diminution versus us doing it 100% on our own. And
Absolutely.
that leap of faith, I think, is the hardest one for a lot of entrepreneurs to get over, because they recognize, wait a minute, I'm better than everybody, and the true power, which is what I feel now in the business that I'm in now, is I believe the quality's improved by the results that my team's able to produce versus what I was able to produce. But it took me a long time to get there.
Right. So I know this is a very important point, and you went through it. So tell the entrepreneurs that are listening to us, how did you actually get yourself, how did you manage that shift in the mindset from I'm doing it the best, I'm the only one who can do it? And it's more even true than even in a service industry where people are signing up. Well, I'm signing up because I want to talk to Noah. I want Noah to be my CPA. I want Noah to do my tax strategy. I went to a lecture and listened to Noah. Didn't listen to a lecture of his staff. I want to work with you. How did you overcome that situation of basically wanting to work with Noah and Noah feeling that, yeah, of course they want to work with me because I'm the best?
So I would say when it became easier for me was when I was detached from the outcome. So when I achieved financial independence, I had sold my last operating business, and I was, functionally retired as an operator of a business that I owned. I still made plenty of investments. I owned lots of businesses, but I wasn't in control of any of them. And then when I started what's now Freedom Family Office and our sister company, WealthThrive, those businesses, when I started them, I didn't need them to be successful. They didn't need to make a penny. And so when people approached me, really, the business was born out of people asking me if I could help them and me saying no. I was speaking, like you heard me talk. I got popular, speaking to groups, entrepreneurs, about how they could develop their strategy, tax strategy, how they could become rich beyond money. And people were inevitably, saying, can you help me? Can you help me? And I was just saying no. And finally I said, I'm really doing a disservice, not only to them, but to myself, as someone who really cares about entrepreneurs and wants to serve entrepreneurs and wants to be helpful to entrepreneurs. That's why I'm talking. That's why we're here today, sharing some of these concepts. But I didn't want a job. And so I figured out the best way to do that is let me build the team. Let me educate them and train them on all the things that I would normally do. But when I've assembled this team, I now have a team of about 20 accountants, lawyers, and financial planners that all work together to help entrepreneurs achieve their goals. But because there's 20 of them, my co-founder, Peter, he has much deeper expertise as a 40-year attorney, especially in estate planning and matters related to the law. My co-founder, Jenna, who worked at Bridgewater Associates and Goldman Sachs, she has much better expertise at process and interviewing and HR and team management. And, Keisha, who's our client service associate, she's much better at taking the action items from a meeting and making sure they get implemented. So I've now assembled a team of people that individually can complete each aspect of their role much more proficiently than me. And in aggregate, I have so much confidence that when my team serve someone, they're going to get a better outcome than me. And the reality is, if that person on the other end says, no, I only want you, the answer is no, and I'm okay with it.
Beautiful. It's a great answer. And even if you're not there, for our listeners, just pretend like you are, just like the lottery ticket, right? So how would you behave if you didn't rely on the business? Because regardless, having that desperation is not going to get you anywhere. I mean, some of us, and I mean, I'm sure you're as well, like super competitive, and we will have the competition. You know, you want to do well, you want your business to exceed, whether you need it or not, the income doesn't matter. Because as you said, there is more, it's reach beyond money. So it's also that satisfaction that you can help as many people as you want, as you can, or that satisfaction that your team is doing well, you know, that drive, not necessarily I'm going to work for my paycheck, but I'm going to work to fulfill my purpose. That is enough of a drive, but you don't have to come from desperation. So that's what you're saying. It's kind of like you didn't need to, so then you did.
And also, I would add that my scorecard evolved. When I was in my 20s and 30s, really more even so my 20s, my scorecard was strictly focused on what was my income, what were my expenses, how much money was I saving, and how was I growing my net worth. And I was exclusively focused on this fast charge to becoming wealthy, and really just focusing on the financial aspect. When I had children, my scorecard changed, and I started managing, you know, how many nights was I having dinner with the family? How many nights was I sleeping in bed next to my wife? How many, you know, days was I able to go on vacation and create new experiences with my kids? And so as a result of changing my scorecard, I would say, oh, you know, there's this great opportunity that I might be able to generate new business at this event. But you know what? I went out Monday night and I went out Tuesday night. I want to be home Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Like, that's it. 2 was my limit. And I started setting limits for myself that reduced my potential income, but increased my rich beyond money status.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that is very important, because otherwise we get into what is referred to as burnout. You know, it's you're not satisfied and you're not getting to really what you want. So it's that deeper purpose, it's deeper meaning that will get you to what you want to achieve in life. Which brings me to the next topic, which is the legacy you want to leave. And that's part of what you talk to your clients and work with your clients on. You have the life, the predictable income, the life that you want to live, but then it's also the legacy that you leave behind.
And it's even more so what I try and help people focus on is what's the legacy they want to create while they're alive? And how are you going to influence the way your impact on others is while you're here? Bill Perkins wrote a great book called Die with Zero, which talked about utilizing your financial assets during your lifetime. But I also want people to utilize all of their creativity, their ingenuity, and their expertise to serve others while they're here. Don't, you know, let it necessarily just focus on your own business success, but how can you expand it by sharing your experience with others, by creating a deeper family, a more meaningful family bond? How can you support noble causes? And when you integrate, you know, what I like to think of as that trifecta of not only focusing on your family and your community, but sharing your experience, you're going to find a deeper meaning and purpose to continuing to create your own legacy while you're here.
I love it. Absolutely. Because you want to enjoy that. And that's how you also leave legacy. It's not just with money, it's also with action. So if you want to go to South America and volunteer and build houses, you can do that. But then you are really creating the legacy, and you see that in time. I mean, you see what you're doing. So I think it's a very smart approach. You know, we talked about how you help entrepreneurs. We talked about the philosophy. What are some of the mistakes that you see that entrepreneurs make in regard to their wealth and money?
So my primary focus that's unique in the marketplace is that we really help entrepreneurs dial in and develop a tax strategy. So many of the entrepreneurs that we see rely on their accountant to prepare their tax returns. But when they ask them, you know, what else should I be doing? They get a blank stare, they get, you know, no ideas, and they don't know, what does that mean? Does that mean there's really nothing else out there? And one of the messages that I'm trying to carry to our EO community, to the entrepreneurial community at large, is that there is more that you can do. You need to have a tax strategist on your team, especially if you're a high income earner. If you're making, kind of good money, but not great money, yeah, tax strategy may not play as big of a role. But the clients that I particularly work with, people earning $1 million or more, they can save a significant amount of money if they're willing to invest in developing their tax strategy. And so that's, I would say, a key area of focus that is often overlooked.
Absolutely. Now, Noah, what about a purple? Let's talk about purple. So
I'm always wearing purple.
Always wearing purple, and I love purple, but tell us why.
So purple became my favorite color. Growing up, it was blue. I joined a college fraternity, which is known as Fiji, Phi Gamma Delta. Our color was royal purple. So royal purple became my favorite color. And then as business went on, about maybe it was 5 or 6 years ago, David Randell gave a talk at EO South Florida. His book is called Freak Factor. David's a wonderful speaker, and he wore pink. And David ended up facilitating a family retreat for my family. I've gotten to know him. And what was interesting was kind of observing how his personal brand got affiliated with the color pink. And I thought, you know what? I like purple, so why don't I affiliate my own personal brand with a color? And everywhere I go, I'm wearing either a purple shirt, I got purple shoelaces, I have a purple watch, I have a purple suit. And so it's an easy way for people to think of me as, oh, yeah, no, what the guy that wears purple. So it's a great connection point. And, royal purple is obviously the color that people associate with royalty. And so I think
royalty
it's a
and
good brand
aesthetic
association
and
as
high,
well.
high level, absolutely. And I love purple. Purple is actually my favorite color, believe it or not. I actually have even a purple couch at home.
Oh,
and
wow.
I love purple. So I think purple is great, but it's, as you said, it's memorable. You can remember, it's like the guy in purple. Oh yeah, of course I know the guy in purple. He gave a great talk about
Well,
tax but then there is a connection, but it's really easy to remember.
Thank you. Yeah. And I found that, everybody needs a hook. Everybody needs something, a way to be memorable. And, I'm short and I'm overweight and I'm Jewish. And so those aren't always the best descriptions to say, do you know Noah, the short, fat Jewish guy? So purple's a lot easier.
I love it. That's
and
great.
the other hook, you mentioned it at the outset. So I'm a 3rd generation CPA. That wasn't something I talked at all about earlier in my career, but I've recognized there was a time where I was not going to be a CPA any longer because I haven't prepared tax returns in decades. And so there was a time that I was going to drop my CPA designation. And I actually put out a post on social media. I didn't own a business. There was really no reason for me to continue to maintain my designation. But people said, Noah, it's so much of who you are as someone that's high integrity, that's, intellectual, that has a good brain, that thinks about money, so it really associates with your personal qualities. You should really keep it. And that's when I was like, you know what, I'm a 3rd generation CPA. Let me put that out in the marketplace a little bit more.
Makes sense. So it's really building your personal brand, which I love what you did, and it's working, obviously, because you're very successful and you're well known, well respected in the entrepreneurial community. And it's your knowledge and what you do, but in order to open doors, you have to show up, and that's what you do. Absolutely. So if people want to hear more, want to connect with you, learn more about you, learn from you, where can they find your books and how can they connect with you?
So my social media content is relatively active. I'm always posting new content about taxes and wealth and investments and lifestyle, real estate. So you could find me on Instagram or Facebook or LinkedIn. I think we're launching a YouTube channel pretty soon, but if you connect with me on any of those channels, you'll be sure to follow along and hear what I'm posting. If you wanted to connect with my team to talk about your own situation and see if there might be ways that you could increase your income and become closer to living rich beyond money, you could go to talktofreedom.com and you'll schedule a call with our team and we could see how we might be able to help you. I'd welcome the opportunity to hear from your listeners, some success stories that they have around planning their tax strategy with our Freedom team.
Fantastic. Well, Noah, it's been a pleasure having you on the podcast. Thank you so much for being a guest.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
You're very welcome.
Thanks for listening to the System Simplified podcast. We'll see you again next time, and be sure to click subscribe to get future episodes.